sudden I got the hang of this WebEx,
We're in Northern California.
I lived, when I was a child, I lived in the Bay Area and on the peninsula in San Mateo. Then I lived in Davis, outside Sacramento. Then I lived in Walnut Creek.
My mom grew up in San Carlos.
Oh, really? Hmm.
I had a good friend who was from Linda.
Oh, yeah? I like some things about California, but I didn't like the culture because it was like San Francisco's its own story, but like in the Bay, in East Bay where I live, it's like people, if you moved one town over, they never came to see you again because it was too much work. Like everybody was into everything being easy. And so I didn't feel like it was hard to leave. Oh, now I have to turn it down. This was on when I came in,
That goes on.
but it was on when I walked in. I turned
Goes
it
off
off.
randomly. Been lecturing.
No, I mean, I turned it off because I thought it shouldn't be burning its light bulb. So now I have to remember to turn it on again. I thought those bright light bulbs are horribly expensive. So I thought, but maybe maybe they're not horribly expensive anymore.
There's a button in it to mute, which will turn it off and not turn off the projector, so.
Oh. Well, there I am.
Ready for the lecture? Go to Guatemala?
Probably, well, I don't know. Dogs are a big deal there. Hi there.
This is fun. We got another little friend. On vision.
Yours.
Are you the baby?
No. Middle one.
My Lord. Oh, you're so cute. So breathing. Wow.
A little nervous. He's starting to settle down a little bit.
You went to school so I can bring her. I've taken her to school. She's been doing pretty well. She's shot out of a cannon. How are you?
Good.
Ready to be done. I think we're all ready to be done. Long semester.
I'm ready to be done.
I was gonna say, where is it that we find these recordings of the students?
I'm supposed to get a copy of them, and so I need to find them.
Posted though. You Google the title.
Is it like on the same page where the schedule and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
But I can't get in that, I don't think, right?
I think so.
You think?
Yeah, I think because it's just a link and I think it's placed.
Because I want to post it on my YouTube channel.
I'm not sure.
Oh, you got another puppy today.
Yeah.
I'm gonna feel terrible because he didn't want to meet me.
Oh, he didn't?
Oh, he's really nervous. He's in his middle.
And I'm a dog person.
They don't always know.
I love animals, but like, my sister would go up to any animal on the street, hug it, because she's always got treats in her pocket. I'm not like,
Oh, yeah.
the animals always.
No, no.
My father was like that.
He doesn't want it.
Well, like,
What's going on?
really did, but he would always be like the grumpy old man, like, I don't get it. But no matter what.
No, I don't have a
He
treat.
did have very bad allergies.
I'm sad.
Anywhere we
Oh,
would go near a cat.
you know, you
it was
don't
like
have to stop with everything.
magnet, it's sort of like they
I'm
know.
not sure what's going on.
Yeah.
No, if he didn't like you, you'd go away.
I'm not sensitive.
He generally is more wary of men too. So
Yeah, my
think
sister also
that-
like that.
Something.
It's not, when I was looking for a pet, it was almost always like, please don't have to be a man in the house, you know, like, it's funny how many,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
What's his name?
York?
York?
I love that little spot. Very good. So, you know, is that, I'm visiting Professor from your classes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I haven't heard from him recently, but contacted me about.
So like same thing, is it open or are you
Yeah,
6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, okay. I want to eat it. This guy's, it's Caribbean, I don't know, I thought, because I don't think I could go to, that's, oh, I can't go to Italia stuff at all. So, that would be nice. I kind of want to just say hello and meet him. He's a, I think he's a doctoral student. He has PhD in Hispanic Caribbean literature. And it was, and he's talking about like race and gender, I think, in the literature, and I was like, you gotta talk to this guy, and he said, because he's in Florida. And I thought, oh, that's very
Nice
interesting.
place to be teaching race and
I
gender.
was just gonna say, I wonder if he's, you know,
well,
he could be in trouble.
no, he doesn't teach there.
Oh, he's
He's
just,
doing it, yeah, he's finished.
I mean, like, even, I think all these college presidents are now getting licensed.
Well, I'm sure he's
I mean,
eager
they're,
to finish and
yeah,
get out.
check out of there, yeah, they're fighting it though, I mean, yeah, I forget what I was reading, there's a bunch of course, there's all sorts of, professors against it, but these college presidents are having a hard time.
What I heard is they're starting to look like, athletes, not go to Florida and Texas, because they're getting rid of our African studies department.
Wow, that's powerful, actually.
And that's been,
It is.
That'll make a difference, right?
It might, that's really interesting, how interesting, right, who cares what the teachers think? We have all these like.
Money, right?
Petitions, you know, they don't know what we think, but, yeah, the way.
You touch that budget, maybe that's true. Sadly, but it's true.
The only way, you gotta make it hurt. You can't do the right thing just for the right thing.
No.
What happens?
So I missed the part, why are they both?
What's his name?
Because DeSantis's policies are so anti-black, anti-gay, anti-everything.
Yeah. Talk about it in high schools, but then they moved it down there. How it is. No, I hope they don't just, yeah, it's gonna be splitting up. We had all 3 women last week.
Hmm?
All
Oh,
three
you-
women.
did you?
We had
Oh,
a great
good.
conversation. And even Melanie was like, I think this can be part of the thing, but we had a great conversation.
And did it work with 3?
Oh, that's great. Conversation, we shared some things.
That's really great.
Now we're gonna start sharing, some, resources with them and now we're trying to refine.
So that's just you and Melody doing that?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Kate-
I'm giving you a little shout out in my newsletter, so I didn't want it
Yeah.
a little taunt.
Very, very good thing.
No, it's really helpful. It's just terrible how hard it is to organize.
Well, this is,
Because everybody's busy and they're not necessarily busy at the same time.
I'll tell you, honestly, because Melody has the right attitude. I mean, she's like, I'll do it, I'll do it. in the summer. I don't have that much to do in the summer. That is amazing.
That would be
Like,
great.
So I want to do that. So, I mean, I think it's something maybe,
well, now they're friends.
we could maybe expand on it. I mean, we get it to something.
And it worked with 3 people and 2 of you? And will it work with,
Well, Johanna has a lot more English than Michaela and just Gladys.
I think Michaela and Gladys are just starting.
Yes, yeah, that's what it's, so that's in
Yeah.
there. So,
Okay, welcome to the 10th and final lecture. So, in the last 9 weeks, we've been talking about why Grupo Kahoot started, how Maya Weaver started, how we honor culture, but sometimes we break from culture, the importance of education, a little bit about gender inequality, and the path towards self-sustainability. So tonight, what I wanted to do is reflect a little bit on what I have learned so far on this still unfinished journey. And I'm going to be talking about migration and culture and the lessons that I've learned. So, Kahala's dramatic migration statistics, remember 40% of the community lives in the United States, reflect the burden of poverty, but they also reflect human resilience because the community has lost people who have hope, who have courage, and who have motivation to change. But then they have people like Eduardo, who when he went to the United States, if you remember, he saw things that he hadn't seen before, and he brought them back to Kahoot as a way to improve there. And of course, while he was in the States, he learned his history of his community and his country, and he was inspired to go back and develop the community so that there was no more need for forced migration. So practically speaking, the migrants help their families survive. Those billions of dollars of remittances that they send back, as you can see on the chart, 35% go to food and clothing, so necessities. 50% are those houses that they're building for themselves, 7% for health and education, and only 8% for investment for business or something like that. I haven't seen any evidence that Kahoot, the community of Kahoot, is channeling any of those remittances into community development, but we, Grupo Kahoot, are going to be targeting the Kaholenses in the diaspora as we start to build or look for funding for our school project. The costs of this migration are very high when we consider the social fabric disintegration, that families get separated, the children are growing up without their parents, and families can also lose their land if they have pledged it as collateral against a loan to pay a coyote for the trip north when the migrant doesn't successfully navigate. The experiences of migrants are have a lot of variability. There are some who don't make it over that border crossing. For those who make it over the border crossing, some of them end up in the United States getting jobs and being able to save money, send it back for those houses. Some of them end up in the United States, but somehow don't really get themselves acclimated here, and so their life here doesn't work out that well for them. But even for those that succeed and stay here to earn money to build their houses, if they stay for longer than that, which usually takes 4 or 5 years, if they stay, say, longer than 10 years, it becomes very difficult for them to return to Kahoot. When they return to Kahoot, they and their families have been growing differently. They are growing here, they're growing there. And even though they keep in contact all the time by phone, when they go back to Kahoot, they don't really know how to get themselves back into their families. They don't have a role there anymore. On top of that, when they get back, they're accustomed to earning a certain amount of money, and that kind of a job is not available in Kahoot. And then they come back with savings, but those savings don't last that long. So in the end, they have no role in the family. They don't really have a job. And so they really need to reinvent themselves to get a new purpose in life. And that, I can see, is super challenging and really knocks a lot of them down. I think the biggest negative impact of migration has been on the young. So time after time, when we've had a young man be trained in our carpentry, remember we started that carpentry to give kids training so they'd have a way to earn a living in Kaho'ula. Time after time, when they finish and have acquired some skills, they head for the north. So they apparently think, and probably correctly so, that that skill is going to be worth more in the United States than it is in Kaho'ula. Brianna, the president of our board here in the United States, did her doctoral thesis on researching the strategies that young people use in order to avoid migrating. And so she interviewed lots and lots of our scholarship students. So our scholarship students are using education as a strategy to avoid migration. And even though they know that this course of education is not probably going to lead them to work because the system is rigged against them, they feel they really don't want to go, they don't want to migrate because they don't want to leave their families. They don't want to leave their communities. And the ones studying education feel even if they don't get work, that they'll be able to share this education that they're getting with other members of the community. Importantly for our scholarship students, we're anticipating that our new school project will provide positions for 40 teachers, for the nurses, our doctor in training, our civil engineer, and even some of our carpenters. So cultural changes happen without us making any decisions about them. Television and movies have made the people of Kaho'ula think that the United States is a great place that you can have a dignified life. So they go off with that expectation. But even when I talk with people from Kaho'ula in the United States or in Kaho'ula, they'll say to me, wow, the United States is really great. And I point out to them, do you really think it's great, or it's great because there's work? Because that's what we have in the United States that they don't have. Actually, they have work, it's just not well-paid work. So the answer is they don't really like the lifestyle here because it's so different from the lifestyle that they have there, and it's away from their family, but it's a way that they can survive. And we don't even need to start talking about the vulnerability that they feel every day from being undocumented. So migration has changed the mom culture. The mom culture used to be one of collaboration. So not that long ago, if you needed a house, your neighbors all got together and you all built the house together. But of course, with migration, how you build a house now is the migrant sends money back and their house is constructed for money. And again, TV and movies have made the culture there more consumer-oriented, more valuing material possessions. So Grupo Kaho'ula's work has always been based on supporting the underlying mom culture and worldview in the sense of working collectively, in the sense of respecting nature, in the sense of recognizing that the language is important to convey your culture. Our preschool also reinforces the culture because the children are learning in their language. The preschool is practicing that the indigenous identity of the children and the parents is very important. So they're speaking in their own language, mom, that's what they do their most learning in. They do learn Spanish as a second language, and they're immersed in their worldview and in their culture. And this helps the children feel really good about themselves. So I have a favorite story about the children and how I think how I saw that they feel good about themselves. So at the end of each school year, the the closing ceremony includes a Maya ceremony. And often the teachers have decided to go somewhere outside of Kahola for that ceremony. So a few years back, when I happened to be there, we were going to the Maya sacred site that's called Takalikabak. So we went there. We had the Maya ceremony. We had a picnic lunch with our busload of kids and their families. And after lunch, we went on a tour of this site, which was given by a Ladino archaeologist. So as we're walking along, the guide points out to us in this big stone, look there's an eagle here. Look at his beak. Well, that attracted the children's attention and they all came running to the guide. Show me the beak, show me the beak. So he did. And from that moment on, those kids were pestering that guide with questions. And wherever we went, those kids were there asking questions. So one thing that I thought was cool is that's showing that they have this curiosity. But the thing that really impressed me is these kids, preschool kids, are talking to a Ladino adult as if he's their peer, as if they had every right in the world to be asking him those questions. And for me, that showed the value of our school. So for women earning their own living, that's improved their own self-esteem, and it's made them, in my observation, more assertive of their rights with their partners. Bearing children also seems to be a key identity factor for the women in Kahola, regardless of their education or regardless of their family situation. It's very important for them to have children. Having access to scholarships has been important for the women in order to be able to advance their careers. And you may have noticed that our board of directors has a large majority of women. This has allowed the women to take leadership roles, which they fill very competently and very visibly, very competently. So, what lessons have I learned? So, on reflection, the fact that I had a savings account to fund the project so that when we decided we wanted to do one, we didn't have to wait to find funding for it. That was good, except the downside of that is we did projects without the participants needing to invest anything, needing to participate with that. And so in our egg farm, that proved to be a problem. So in the egg farm, we had first go around, we had a cooperative of about 20 women. After a few years of working, I could see that a third of the women really understood it and were taking initiative and were taking responsibilities. Another third of the women were really good workers. And the last third of the women weren't really good workers and they really didn't take responsibility. So it was clear we were not on any kind of a path to self-sustainability. So Eduardo and I decided to close the project down, which we did. And we paid back the small contributions each of the women had made in order to participate in the project. Then, after about 6 months, 6 or 7 women came back to us and asked, could they restart the project? So we agreed that if this time they would invest the money to buy their equipment, which would be the feeders and the waterers, that the buildings were still there, and I had received donations to buy hens. So if they would put the money into the equipment, then they would be able to start again. And so that's what happened. And that has been, or was really a success. In fact, until last September, it was my poster child project, because here it was marching along. The women did, they sold their eggs, they paid off, they bought their feed whenever the chickens needed it. They sold their chickens when they needed to, they bought new ones. It was super independent. And that was cool. But in September of last year, the women decided they needed a break. So they sold all the hens, divided up the money, and said they were going to wait 6 months to see whether they wanted to start up again. And why did they do this? Well, we remember how chaotic inflation and prices have been, and they really were overwhelmed by how frequently the price of feed went up. And even though they were raising the prices of their eggs, they still found at the end of every month that after they bought the new feed and put aside the money for the next set of hens, that they had no money to take home. So they said, okay, no. Now we're 6 months have passed, and of those women, 2 of the women still want to start, but that's not enough. So it's still on pause, and we'll just have to see whether they find another 3 women in order to open it again. I believe another reason that the women became discouraged is because one of the motors of their group was Eduardo's mother, Juana. I don't know if you remember, but she was a key collaborator of mine when I started and helping me with organizing and translating for all the groups. Well, she had been the main energy for the egg farm. And sadly, in May of 2020, she died of liver cancer. And so her loss, I think, also clobbered the group a little bit. And the lesson to be learned is not to rely on the group having just one leader, that you need to spread out the leaders. And then another project we had to shut down was our bee project. And why did we start a bee project? Is somebody in the United States had come to me and said he had some ideas for things he could do with honey here in the United States. If we would produce the honey, he would be able to buy it. So I went back and asked Grupo Kahala, are you interested in doing a bee project? And they decided yes, but they needed to have a couple of people, take the project for themselves. So 2 people came forward that said they wanted to do it. One of them is a young man named Alvino. And so we started into the project. And so we started with figuring out what we needed, buying some of the equipment that the bees need, buying the bees, buying the plants. And right away, the other guy, not Alvino, the other guy decided he didn't really want to do this after all. So we decided, well, we're going to go ahead anyway, and we'll pick up somebody else along the way. So Alvino learned how to operate the bee farm. We knew an organization that also raised bees, so they helped Alvino learn how to be a beekeeper, and he did really brilliantly as a beekeeper. So it wasn't too long before he had taken our 10 original hives and grown it to a colony of 100 hives. However, by this time, the gentleman in the United States had decided he didn't want to do the project anymore. So now what are we going to do with all this honey that we're making? So we were looking for a solution to the sales problem, and we looked and we looked, we tried some people, and nothing seemed to work out. So eventually we decided we were going to spin off the bee project to Alvino. So Alvino has the bee project. What's the lesson in that was a couple. One is we shouldn't have started a project with one person when we're all about collective work. That was a mistake. And I think that Alvino, as a human being, resisted having other people come in on the project. So that made it not work out. So since we're about collective work, we should have waited, and then we should have made a better plan for achieving self-sustainability, including a good sales plan. So sadly, that's our bee story. It was really delicious honey, I will say. And Alvino's done well with it, by the way. He's chugging along. So, in my opinion, one of the accomplishments of having one of the benefits of having this small amount of economic development that we have is it has given hope to people in Kahala that there is are ways that you can earn a living. I talked a lot last week about the challenges of Grupo Cajola, the challenges of Mayamam weavers, the challenges of Tejedores Mayamam. But really the biggest challenge facing us is our new school project, because this is a project to build it and to operate it that's in a whole different level of activities than we've been. And it's going to require us to all learn some new skills. So when I formed the board here in the United States, I expected that I would have less responsibilities. But like the Tejedores Mayamam, who had to learn new skills when they started to outsource their production, I have to learn new skills and take on new responsibilities for us to take this next step towards having a new school. So what would I do differently? Well, the idea of funding, that I didn't let people know about, that I was the source of funding, that I had savings, I think that was a mistake. The reason I did it, I was very quiet as to that, because I didn't want people to know I had a savings account, and I didn't want people to ask me for personal loans, because I really had decided my goal was to invest in this community and not do individual things. But the downside of that was that the people in the organization didn't know where the funding was coming from. And so there was no opportunity for them to start to think about budgeting or controlling money until 5 or 6 years ago, when we started to activate the board. So it did have a downside. And what would I do again? Probably everything that I did. I found a place by looking around my community for something meaningful to do. I started working with undocumented immigrants. That led to me spending a significant portion of my life volunteering in a community, in the Maya community in the Western Highlands of Guatemala. And that, being able to use my skills and my experience to help a community, really has given me a great sense of satisfaction. I learned that community development is a slow process, and that the cultural and historical challenges can be much greater than the funding issues. Funding is fairly straightforward. And I learned more than I ever imagined about textiles and about chickens. And I answered my own question of how hard could it be? Since whenever I think of something new, like, how hard could it be? Well, in this case, the answer was pretty hard. But all along the way, we have benefited from having people come out of the sky or wherever to help us do the things, or help us provide the expertise, help us do the things that we needed to do so we could make the progress that we've made so far. And I would like to close this lecture with Eduardo's motto, that we make haste slowly, step by step. So thank you for coming. I'd like you to stay in touch. I have a sign-up sheet. If you give me your email, I'll send you our newsletter. And if you want to buy on our website, the QR code will take you to the website. And if you use Grupo Cajola as a code, you can get free shipping. Any questions, comments?
This was wonderful. Nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah. Really
No questions? I didn't say anything that you didn't already know.
First question is, how do you take step by step? in Mon.
I don't know. Oh, I do, Chavitia. Sorry.
That was my.
I'm sorry, I do know it, because I've always harassed Eduardo that, how do you think we're gonna develop a community whose motto is step by step?
How do you say it again?
Chavitia.
Chia.
But don't listen to me speaking Mon,
Well-
listen to your contacts.
Yeah, can I ask them that?
Of course.
I mean,
Ask
is
them
that-
to say how to they can say Chavitia, they'll just say it right.
And that's what you, that whole sentence that you said, that's what.
No, that just means step by step.
Okay.
So when we took students, I was reminiscing with Caryn that one of the things we did is we hiked up a volcano that has a lake, the crater, that's a holy area for them. But it's really high altitude, probably at about 8,000, 9,000 feet up there. I was struggling because of the altitude. And I learned that phrase, and that became my mantra as going up the hill.
Makes sense.
But I'd forgotten it, but when you mentioned it, I knew you would know it.
No, I forgot. No, you're right. I mean, I don't think of it like that. And he doesn't talk to me and Mom because I wouldn't understand. No, I just like, how do you, a community, this whole thing is step by step. How are we gonna get to this? But you're right, that's true.
I have another question. The data that you started with, the resources that are sent back, that was for couple.
No, that's for general, Guatemala. I don't have any good.
Oh, that was from Guatemala.
That
Okay.
is Guatemala.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I don't see why we would be that different, to tell you the truth. Except I don't see the investment. Except the investment in business, that can be setting up a store for yourself.
Do you have any, oh, right.
Fine. No,
No, I was just gonna say, do you have any sense of how many have returned? Is there, you know, like a
you mean at all?
raw number of how many people have migrated and then returned back? Is it, it's a lot, it's a lot?
It's a huge number,
Okay.
because the number when I say there's 40% here in the States, these are the people here now, right? They're not people that have ever been here, because
Okay,
all
so
those
it's
people
just-
back there, they've been there. And then there's also the people that don't make it.
Mm.
There's also the people that, anyway, no, I have no idea what it is. I know that we were a couple of years ago, #1 in the number of people deported,
Oh, wow. Wow.
but no, I don't have any idea. Every single family, you will never find a family in Kabbalah that hasn't been touched by migration. It doesn't exist.
Do you have any sense of what the cost for migration is?
Right now, the coyote cost, I think it's around 15.
Wow.
And when they borrow, I don't know how many of you know anything about migration, when they borrow that money to go, they have to pay it back with interest, 10% a month. Or they lose their house.
So much. That's really fun.
Okay.
A treat. Thank you for that, Karen.
Thanks for coming.